Hey guys, what's up? It's Murray with Swipe in the City. Welcome back. We've got another extra special shit show for you guys today. Super excited about it. Michelle, how are you doing this morning? How are you feeling?
This morning, I'm pretty good. I've been waking up earlier, which is great on
Weird.
weekdays. But that means that my body naturally woke me up at 6:30 this morning. So that's new.
Oh.
But yeah, I went to the shelter and got to meet some new doggos. So I'm pretty good this morning. A little tired, but I'm here and ready to party.
Let's go. I am exhausted from the work week and really excited after we record to do absolutely nothing for the rest of the weekend. So that's kind of where I'm at today. But Michelle, you want to talk a little bit about our sponsor today? Because
Yeah, sure.
that's why we're extra special.
That's it's an extra special episode. So if you're watching on video, you might see that I'm wearing this dope ass hat that says Death X Mimosa, Death by Mimosa. And you would see that Marie is wearing a hilarious crop that says Still Drunk from Yesterday. Which ironically, she's a little hungover today and I'm not, which is a very interesting role reversal on Swipe in the City.
Yeah. Very confused.
But yeah, Death by Mimosa, it's one of my friend's brands. Basically, it is, it's Sunday, you're hungover, you're gonna go get some mimosas to recover. They have some cool stuff, some funny sayings, and it's like I feel like it's very well done too. Like it's just simple. I've gotten a ton of compliments on this hat, so we'll post a link and send y'all over to their page. But yeah, we're really excited to have a sponsor today.
We've
Uh,
made it. I think
we
we've made it, Michelle.
we're huge. We're influencers. It's fine. Marie, what else are we excited about today?
I don't know if we're excited about it, but we have another kind of difference today with today's episode. That we're not drinking beer. I would like everybody to just take a moment and be very confused. I am drinking vitamin water. Michelle, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Crystal Light. It's like
Wow.
one of my favorite drinks, I guess, like non-alcoholic drinks. And I usually mix like three flavors like a psycho. So I've got this giant 32-ounce mason jar. To be honest, there would probably be some vodka in there if I had any, but Um, but what we're also excited about is our special guest. Emily, do you want to let everyone know what you're drinking and then maybe give a little intro about yourself?
I am drinking chai tea. Thank you all for joining me on this non-alcoholic journey in the morning. I appreciate that. I feel like you're making a sacrifice, but maybe not. Maybe you're enjoying your sober beverages. So I guess the best way to introduce myself is I'm neighbors with Marie and Michelle's. And they're just those like bright parts of your day during the summer that you meet by the pool. And they just kind of came up and started talking to me. And I think it's been a little over a year now. We just have managed to keep in touch. Michelle, like you, I am a morning person lately. I don't know why. And I think we find ourselves sending each other things in the morning. So I'm always really happy when you're up early because I have someone to talk to.
Yeah, I love it. Like there are a couple of people that I know are up early, like Paul, PM Jams, the listeners, y'all are familiar with him. That motherfucker gets up at like 5 a.m. every day.
Okay,
So
that
if I'm up early, I'll just start sending him memes at like 6. And I'm just like, he'll respond. He's on Instagram right now.
no. Luckily, I'm not up at 5. You can hit me up at like 8.
So Emily, tell us a little bit about your dating life. Are you actively dating? Are you single? Are you in a relationship?
I have had a long journey of of dating. Currently single. And I feel like it's a cliche, but single and thriving. And this is actually in the last 6 months has been the first time I haven't actively even been pursuing dating. So that's been a little interesting and different.
Is it like you haven't been actively pursuing it because of the pandemic or just personal choice or both?
Probably a little bit of both. I think it started off with the pandemic. Like we just weren't supposed to be around people. And
Right.
I, like maybe some others, tried the Hinge video dates that they started advertising in the
Yeah.
beginning. And that was fine, but you really could only get so far with it. So then I thought, this is just an opportunity for me to go cold turkey. And so that's been about 4 months now, like no apps, nothing. It's different. It's the only word I can give it. Different.
Sorry, excuse me. I'm allergic.
Marie's having a reaction because there isn't booze in front of her this morning.
She's like, no dating. Oh,
yeah,
I know. I'm like, I'm allergic to this.
Yeah. So you mentioned, well, I guess that's a good transition into our topic today. So our topic is around setting and owning your standards, as well as like how you hold yourself accountable, evolving standards. We have a list of 50 standards that everyone should have. Don't worry, we'll share that out.
They're bare minimum standards too.
You came up with 50. Like I just try to keep up with 3 for myself. Like I need to get on your level.
Oh, we did not make this up. I cannot take any credit except that I did a little Google search and found it. But it's great. I'm
excited to learn something. Let me just tell you.
Oh, you will. Well, should we dive right into it, Michelle?
Let's do it.
You want to dive into the list? Should we do you want to start there?
I was thinking we could work our way there, but if you've got it open, go for it.
I feel like I should just keep it bookmarked, to be honest with you, moving forward. Do we want to skip around or do we want to start from the top? Because, actually, the first one does go really well with the two of you sending each other morning memes. Number 1, date somebody who'd rather cuddle with you in the morning than scroll through their Instagram feed. What?
Should Michelle and I just date each other since we're already like memeing each other in the first thing in the morning?
Maybe that's the solution here.
I was like, go ahead.
I feel like there's a time and a place for both, and you can also do them at the same time, depending on, if you're still kind of snoozing. I don't really want to wake up to someone just like staring at my face.
I know, right? Like, I'm watching you sleep.
You're so
I feel like if a guy can wake up to my morning face, like it's love. Like because it is not always going to be pretty. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's we could skip around through these. We'll send you the full list, Emily.
I need to see this.
So this is my personal favorite, and I feel like this is really relevant to like the general population of people dating. Date someone who doesn't borrow money from your friends to feed their gambling addiction.
Wait, oh my gosh. How is this even a standard? Is that not just common knowledge? Like, why does this have to be said? You should just know.
It's just so painfully specific. Like,
and Marie, what would you do if I was dating someone and they asked you to borrow money? Like,
it's one thing if you need to borrow money, like you forgot your wallet at home, like that's one thing, right? It's another thing when you're like, when you have like a serious problem, like.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I also
that's going to be a hard no for me.
Yeah, that's a hard no. I also feel like if my boyfriend were exposing the fact that he had a gambling problem, I feel like I'd be like, can we talk about how we present yourself to the world? Like, like like obviously the asking for money is already a little rude from someone, but it's more about just like what you choose to keep private in your relationship. Like, I feel like if I had a boyfriend who was a gambling addict, I'd be like, we need to work on this privately. Not talk about it to my friends.
Yeah.
Just at the Lennox pool parties trying to start bets with everyone. Like, I'll bet you a White Claw that you won't jump in the pool. Like
honey,
just hustling.
I love this because I could literally see your reaction and you being like, no, like what? No, stop. We have to go.
Yeah, it's time to go. This other standard I really like, who doesn't ask you to rate their sex game out of 10.
Wait, repeat. I don't get it.
Like you've just, had sex, and that's how I'm imagining it. Like this guy finishes and rolls over and he goes, "Hey babe, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good was that?" That's what I'm imagining.
Okay, is it coming from a place of insecurity or is it coming from a place of like, I'm a fucking 10? Like,
does it matter?
So what if it were switched? Like, would you ever turn to a guy and say, how was that for you? I feel like no. So I feel like it should just be off the table.
I mean, I feel like there's other ways to talk about how good the sex is that are like a little bit more productive than like 1 out of 10. Like, let me rank this as if I would rank like a survey that I'm taking for work. Like,
and are you? Go ahead.
And I've dated really competitive men, and so like sometimes I just think, like, I can literally think of someone I've dated who would say that to me, but not in a like douchey way, but in a way where he's like, did I impress you? Like, it's just, he was an athlete, so he was competitive, and that was just how his brain worked. So yes, I think initially it was like, when you read it, it freaks me out, but I can think of guys I know who would ask that.
But you've never been asked.
No. I'm always like one that like tries to understand like the other side of it. But yeah, no, you're right. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that.
Fair.
Maybe I've never slept with anyone that cares whether I orgasmed or not. Maybe that's part of it.
Maybe that's a standard.
That is one.
I think that is on the list, actually.
Yeah, they should
care.
They should definitely care.
This is a good one. Date someone who doesn't point out other women they find more attractive than you.
I have no word. Just no. Just don't do it. No, never.
The bar is very high. Also, date somebody who wants to meet you in person. Speaking of Hinge and virtual dating,
I mean, if you haven't met in person, you're not dating. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That goes back to our episode on like, we didn't even talk about that on our episode where we talked about like the relationship spectrum, but we totally should have talked about like, if you've had 15 online dates, like, can you be boyfriend and girlfriend if you've never, I sound 12. Can you be partners if you've never met in person?
Wow, we missed a huge opportunity there. We weren't even thinking about normal life and COVID and all that.
That's
We might have to re-record or something. Just kidding, kind of.
I feel like we should
like a year later, 2021 one, and see if it's evolved at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like we should we can come back to the list. I feel like we should take a break from it. Emily, earlier you mentioned that you have 3 standards or like 3 specific ones. I would love to hear more about that.
I mean, it's a big one. My first one is consistency. To me, consistency just requires more action than words. And I'm big on that. I don't really like enjoy texting or phone calling. So sometimes like I'm asking men to be consistent, but then I'm not doing the same. And so I think consistency is just a good one for them, but also for a standard for yourself. Like, okay, if I'm asking them to give that, what am I doing the same in return? And I found in some cases I wasn't. So consistency is a good one just because it makes you kind of check yourself. I think for me, another standard is how they treat not just other people, but like my friends and my family. It's not a complete deal breaker, but that's just something I respect. I mean, ultimately. And I would hope that they would expect that from me as well. And then my third one, it's just got to be a sense of direct honesty. And I think we all I know sometimes I struggle with that because you don't want to like rock the boat. But one of my standards is just being honest, and it doesn't have, even if you're coming to me later with something, I'm much more responsive to it than not hearing about it or hearing it from someone else. So I think just honesty is a big one as well. So yeah, consistency, how you treat people, honesty. Those are some standards of mine, which I don't know. I seem to find is harder than you would think to attract.
I was literally going to say that. I'm like, it sounds, especially like put that on paper, right? It sounds like something everybody should be cognizant of, right?
Yeah.
But I can definitely tell you my dating experiences. I haven't seen all of those. Or maybe I've seen a guy that had like one and not the rest, or vice versa. Like,
I don't know, like, are those too high of standards for maybe our generation? Like maybe it's not about settling me lowering my expectations. It's more about maybe I'm not aware of the reality of where people are at with how they date. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too old school.
No, I don't think that should be, or that that's too high of a standard at all. What do you think, Michelle?
No,
not that I'm an expert.
We're experts as I dip my tea.
No, I think those are super valid. Like how someone treats others. Every time we've done any kind of survey or talked about like deal breakers, deal makers, that like is a universal standard for most people, unless it's the person who's treating other people like shit. I think so. That one I think is super important and more common. I love that you said consistency, because that's something that I think about, but I've never like really like looked at specifically as a standard. But an example of inconsistency, right, is the guy who is super excited texting, and I'm not like an active texter either. Like I do not fucking want you texting me all day long. I will not respond because I'm working or like I'm
an independent woman who has a life.
But it's that like it's like week over week or whatever your time frame is. So like if 1 week they want to hang out like twice and they're being consistent and they're being responsive, and then the next week they disappear for 3 days and or 4 days or whatever it is, and then they come back and they're like interested again, that is definitely a red flag for me. Like someone I've hung out with a couple of times, he kind of disappeared for a couple of days last weekend and just didn't respond to my texts, and then reappeared on Monday and was just like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I called him out on it, even though we'd only hung out, I think, twice at that point. But I was like, hey, just so you know, like you not responding to my texts or acknowledging them at all, like that's actually really frustrating. And that's not something that I'm like okay with in general.
Especially sorry. I was going to say, especially when you like the guy who disappears on the weekend. I feel like that has to be one of the shadiest things. Like, I'm like, what were you doing?
I mean, it usually means they're out. They're doing something else. I mean, that's in all reality. But I also I feel like with guys who aren't consistent, I don't want them to get the misperception that we're like sitting by our phones. Like I will go about my day, I will go about my life and perfectly enjoy those days we don't speak. But I'm keenly aware that you put little to no effort in. But I think it goes both ways, right? Like maybe I don't reach out and he's thinking the same thing. So it's just this like balance of kind of knowing. Again, I just think communication is key. And so if you don't start off with that, it's just going to be really hard. And to Michelle, to your point, I think it's good that you pointed it out, because again, it's not like we're by our phones, like mad or sad. It's just a respect thing. It's like I would think any man would ask for the same thing. Like just respect the fact that we engaged in some form of hooking up, friendship, relationship, whatever it may be. You have to acknowledge them as a person. And I just think that goes both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think about it too. It's like, I try to be forthcoming. Like if I know that I've got a really busy week at work, or I see a message come through, like super, super busy right now, and like try to let the other person in on like maybe why I'm not being as attentive as I would otherwise be. And I feel like I kind of expect that same courtesy.
Right.
But is that crazy?
No, I'm going to be dead honest too. Like if a guy doesn't communicate with me over the weekend, I know what I'm doing when I'm not communicating with a dude. It's because I'm with a dude.
Mm-hmm.
So for men to think we're crazy to think, like assume that sometimes, or maybe we don't, but just to think like, oh, he's dating someone else or he has another woman. There's a reason for that. It's because we have other options too. Like if I don't talk to you all weekend, it might be because someone's here with me. Like, just pointing it out. So I think men have to understand the treatment. Again, goes both ways.
Yeah, most definitely. Do you feel like you're expressive about your standards when you're starting to see somebody, or like at what point do you kind of bring up that conversation?
Oh my God, no, I'm so bad at that. Honestly, like
I love the honesty.
No, I'm fully aware that that's why I'm single, because what is that? Like, and maybe it's just me, but I don't know. I don't think it's a woman thing. I think it's just a protective, guarded thing. It's like, okay, I've done this before. Like I've started this journey before. And in the last situation, I was too open or too honest and it didn't work. And so I don't know. I think maybe past experiences make us more protective of how open we are or emotional. And I like, this is something I'm hoping in 2021 to master, because I'm horrible at it. Like I will just try to like appease for just to keep the peace and like keep it fun. And I don't know what that is.
I think that part of it comes from not wanting people to be like, oh, she's high maintenance, or she's needy, or her expectations are too high, or, oh, she thinks she's whatever. I don't know. Cocky is
she's
like
acting like my girlfriend and we've only been out twice.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. I think it's because a lot of times people will like misconstrue you like expressing standards or expectations as like, oh, it's too much too soon, or it's this or that. And it's like, actually, this is like basic human communication. Yeah, like, again, right. I'm not asking you to text me every day or send me good morning text or anything like that. But if we have been texting daily, or we had plans and you like bailed or whatever, I am expecting communication around that. Or even just like, hey, I have a super busy weekend. If you don't hear from me, like, I'll be out. I'll
thinking
be like,
about you.
Dope. Cool. Enjoy. Same.
I don't men's brains think like that. Like, I don't think they're thinking about the logistics of, hey, I'm going to be really busy this weekend.
No,
like
they don't.
Even like the good men I know they're not wired that way. So I've never expected that from I'm it's like, you got to be realistic with your standards. And that's just one I just don't really get upset when I don't hear from a guy. What I do is I'm like, okay, you've shown your interest level, so I'm going to move forward with my life, because apparently you don't want me part of that right now. Because if you did, you'd be putting in the work, and I'm willing to put in the work with you. but it just can't go one way. And I think that's why in Austin, especially, a lot of my relationships haven't worked out because it's been one way or the other. And so it's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I like that you keep talking about holding yourself accountable to your own standards as well. I don't even know if that's something that we or not holding yourself holding people accountable to your standards, but also you're not putting a standard on anyone else that you don't have for yourself. And I really love that, because I think a lot of times what happens is people are like, oh yeah, like a man must do this and have this, and he must like have, this lifestyle or this income and this. And it's like, girl, you are not doing those things. Yeah. And also where it's just like, oh, he's got to blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, but that's like your behavior. Right. So it's so interesting. I like the idea of like, I'm not putting an expectation that I don't hold myself to or try to, right? Like nobody's perfect. No one's a perfect communicator. No one's perfectly consistent, but that you try to, I think that's really awesome. And I think that's really important as well.
Yeah. And I think the awareness that comes with trying to is really important too, because it's not only making you aware of like the other person and like you said, Emily, like their interest level, but it's also making you self-aware. And to kind of have that, I feel like self-reflection is really important in dating too, because, you're bringing this other, well, I don't know, you're like trying to kind of morph lives, right? Like figuring out if that's going to work. And so you kind of have to be aware of who you are and what you want in order to know really what you want. Does that make sense?
That's perfectly. No, that's, you both just kind of, I feel like, took what I said and compacted it into like a beautiful, beautiful with a bow. I just want to like touch on something too that Michelle was kind of saying is, I think we're in this weird phase between men and women where women are so much more, we're just more modern, right? Like and I don't want to say independent, because I think men see independence as like, we don't want love or we don't want attention. It's like, no, what we're saying is we can be financially stable. We can have all these other and that's something I found as I got older. There's nothing, Michelle said like, oh, he has that or he can buy me that. There's nothing that he can do that I couldn't buy on my own or achieve on my own. And so I think when you remove that, what men are struggling with is now what we're asking for is something a little more internal. And I think that goes to your point, Marie, is like just that reflection. Like I'm self-reflecting as a woman, so are you self-reflecting? Because when we do that together, we can actually be so much stronger than whatever you could buy me. And that might just sound like a super like hipster progressive thing to say, but I think men have to understand like working women do have a different wiring in our brains. We need different things, and either that intimidates you and that's fine, move along. There are plenty of Stepford wives that will love to take care of you like your mother did. But then like, if you're not intimidated by that, then like, come on over, because we could run the world together. Like I'm looking for a partner. I'm not looking for a child. And so
yes.
I think it's okay that our standards are high. I think it bothers men because they don't know if they can meet it. But I think we have to, as women, again, back to my weakness, we have to be able to communicate with that with them in a way that doesn't feel like we're attacking them. Because I know I can be like very judgmental, but it's because I care. Like I want you to feel something with me and connect with me and share with me. So I don't know, it's kind of a long ramble, but I just think if men respect that women are kind of thinking about dating differently and they rewire their brain a little bit more to appease us, we might actually like not have to be on Hinge for a year, and like it might actually benefit everyone a little more. So that's my feminist rant for the day. But
no, I think you brought up some really good points there, and you kind of touched on like the communication part without coming off as like aggressive, right? And that was actually something when we were initially spitballing like names for the episode. We're like, okay, setting and owning your expectations without coming off as negative or rude. Because I think you're right. I think being, I don't want to say careful about the way that you position it, but being aware that what you're saying when I have these standards, that you're not necessarily trying to put the other person down for not meeting them. Right. Or you're not saying like, okay, well, because you don't text me back on the weekends, like I don't want to be with you. You can meet halfway, and it needs to be like, it can be a conversation. It's when they don't want to have that conversation with you that, like, all right, this is not going to work.
I feel like too, one of the things that I thought about with this is where it's appropriate to express those things, like when and where, because
that's a good question.
I feel like there are things that we see in guys like Hinge responses or bios. Like, I really hate the you should not go out with me if question. Same. I feel like you're like posing, it's like it's negative already, and it's a really good place to like offend somebody or just be rude or mean to somebody. So Hinge, if you're listening, I think you should get rid of that one. But a lot of people use it.
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
That's one in particular where I think we see a lot of this, where someone feels like they're like expressing a standard, but I don't feel like that's the appropriate way to do that. I feel like standards, I mean, one, we use them as filters, right, in our own decision making, which doesn't necessarily, someone doesn't need to know that we didn't match with them because they didn't meet it. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't impact them. But I feel like it's something that comes up more so in a conversation once you're actually talking to somebody about, it may be, again, I'm also not a big fan of like, what are you here for? But like, what are you looking for is an actual intentional question that is important when you're looking at someone to date or be in a relationship with or just hook up with. So I think for me, that's where it's like a more appropriate time to talk about some of those things of like what you're looking for and what your standards are versus being like, you should not go out with me if you don't like tacos, or I don't fucking know.
That might actually be funny. That would actually be a good use of the question, especially in Austin.
Yeah, that would like cancel out 90% of Austin if you said I don't like tacos. I would get like 3 likes.
I think you'd have a lot of angry messages actually if you said that you don't like tacos on Hinge. I feel like people would slide in and use that.
So I know you all are the interviewers, but I'm so curious. What would you say are your 3? Like if you had to pick 3 standards and you can't copy, like let's come up with new ones. Like what would we already know that mine are like requirements, I think, and should be. But if you had to list like your 3 standards, and I'm assuming we're talking about like someone you'd build a relationship with, not just a hookup.
I don't really have any standards for hookups.
Hookups, like there's one standard, hot, like it's fine.
Like I see them and I want to see them with their clothes off. Boom.
Yeah,
that's it. That's my standard.
So I'm assuming we mean like relationship building. Okay. I probably should have asked that before I answered earlier. Like, wait, what standards are we talking about here? Because there's a low spectrum.
I would say, and I feel like, I don't know if they're exactly standards, but one for me is drive. Like I'm a very driven person, and I've learned from dating in the past, like I need someone who has the same like energy and drive towards things. It doesn't have to be towards the same things. It doesn't have to, we don't have to be exactly in the same place in life, but my brain is always like, I have a podcast. I volunteer with Austin Pets Alive. I have a full-time job. Like I'm always thinking and doing and not looking for the next thing in a sense, but I'm like driving towards something. And so that's really important for me from, a career, like them having a career or working towards one or building one, but just having like the motivation and excitement for working towards or building towards something, whatever their specific goals are. It's not about that. And it's not necessarily financial, but just like having that energy. Drive is huge for me. I mean, you kind of mentioned communication.
But I think delve into that one more because that's a big one.
Yeah. Like I'm gonna double up on your like honest communication. I'm a very direct communicator. And so not just them being that way as well, but them being able to handle that. Because I know for some guys, they'd be like, whoa, like this is too much, or you're a bitch, or whatever it is. That's fine. Move along, sir. Like, this is never going to work. Right. I don't know. That's like 1.5 because you use that one. Let me think a little bit more. Marie, do you have any of yours?
You took one of mine. Yeah, it is. I mean, like ambition is definitely one of mine for all the same reasons as Michelle. I think one of mine is also, I don't want to say sense of humor because I feel like that is so cliche, but I do want somebody like, they don't need to be, Jared Freed. They don't need to be a comedian. It can't be a podcast with us without mentioning him at least once, but, you have to at least like I have to feel good when I'm with you. And a lot of like when I feel good with other people is tied to when I'm laughing. And so whether we're laughing, we have the same sense of humor and he wants to watch Jared Freed with me. Or like, we just have the same, I don't know, taste in bullshit and we can laugh about the same things together. Like that's what's important to me. And also kind of being able to laugh at yourself sometimes because, especially when it's tied to drive, right? Like you want somebody to take things seriously, but also not too seriously.
Yeah.
That sounds so picky.
No, honestly, like if for me, I always kind of like to delve into the meaning of things. So like for the ambition one, I don't know about your brains, but I tie that to, okay, he wants to achieve this, which means he's also gonna approach that same mindset to our relationship, kids, or whatever our future may be together or not, right? So I think ambition is a sign of consistency in a way, because when they want something, they're going to go after it and they're going to get it done. And I think that makes me feel more safe and secure for that one. And then the sense of humor. Oh, hi, Blue. Sorry. I love your dog. Sorry.
It's just like half of his face under the blanket. Like his ears right here.
He's so over it. And then the sense of humor one, I don't know. I wish I remember who released the information, but they found that couples who like laughed at things and had a sense of humor had longer lasting marriages and were better parents. Because if you're the parents when the baby is like freaking out that are just going to like scream at each other.
Yeah.
When your baby does something annoying or time consuming, that's not benefiting you as a couple or the child. But if like Marie, you like crack a joke, you're like, oh, the baby shit everywhere again, or whatever y'all's sense of humor is, and he can like make you laugh back, then it makes the moment a joyful thing versus a stressful thing. So I actually think sense of humor is a great one.
That's so true. I mean, I think that makes me think specifically about my mom and my stepdad versus my mom and my dad. And yeah, I know that sounds horrible. No offense to my dad. He doesn't really have the best sense of humor. Like he's just not. He's like a very serious guy. And my mom is like me. And we kind of just have this like all over bubbly personality. And my mom and my stepdad cracks the dumbest jokes. Like he's the king of dad jokes. And it just like, and he's also just got like a really inappropriate sense of humor, which like drives my mother insane. But my brother and I think it's hilarious. And so it's like, but to your point, it's like, that's the energy. And I feel like that's why I see my mom and my stepdad as like being a better example of like a good relationship.
Yeah. No, that's a solid one. When you said that, I was like, ooh, that's a good one. Because who wants to wake up next to someone every day that's like angry or boring or I don't know, like something negative?
Scrolling through their Instagram feed.
No, thank you. When you said sense of humor and how you spoke about that, it actually triggered a good one for me. And it's like lifestyle balance, someone who's not an extremist. So like, for example, career-wise, right? Like drive, ambition, yes. Do I want to date someone who is working literally like 16 hours a day because they're so ambitious that they like can't disconnect or take that break? No, that's not going to work for me. Like
there isn't room for you.
Right. And like my weekends are so important and social time is so important. And I need someone that's like, can take that break. Obviously, if it's like, oh, this week in particular, I'm like grinding on a project, sure. But overall, over time, or even like a good example is, I used to be like a CrossFit trainer, with my ex at his gym. And in that community, there are a lot of really hardcore people that like will not eat a piece of bread, like, not that there's anything wrong with not drinking, but like they're just like so hardcore. Whereas like for me and for us, it'd be like, yeah, we would go train for 3 hours if we're looking at a competition, but then we'd go like eat a pizza, right? And it's just like
Hell yeah.
that balance. And I think that applies like in every aspect of my life. Like I work my fucking ass off, but I make time to relax and chill. And, if I need to sleep in one day, I do. Right. So that's actually, I would say that's probably my number 2 would be the being able to have balance.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of ties into like your diversity in personal interests too. Like you said, you'd work out and then go eat a pizza. Like also same, because that's like, I'm like, I work, like if I'm going to work out, it's so that I can eat whatever I want. It's not so that I can be so structured and like obvious, like working out in itself is disciplined. And then also to couple that with like also being like very extreme dieting, there's other things to enjoy in the world too, right? So that's kind of the way I look at it. I like when people have different things that they're interested in.
I think it's just about basically what you all explained, what I imagine it as is just being a multifaceted woman. Like I love to lay in bed and read a book for 3 hours, but I will also go like twerk at the club. Like it's just like I think being a multifaceted woman like would make you more like exciting and dateable. So I think that's to your point, like, yeah, let's go for a run, let's go work out. But like tonight we're like eating ice cream out of the out of the carton and like sitting on the couch. Like it's just, again, I think that's just finding someone, because that's life, right? Like doing those different things. And so I think it's finding someone that enjoys those things too and can kind of, and I find that more and more now that I haven't been in a relationship, I loved being alone. Like when I first got out of the relationship, I literally got like adrenaline, like bursts of joy. And now it's kind of like, okay, like it would be really cool to work out with someone, or like, it would be really cool to go on this hike with someone. And so that's where now I'm like, okay, maybe I'm more open to dating. Because I actually want company, but you have to want it. Like, if you don't want it, you should probably just be single for a little while and enjoy that, because that's beautiful too.
Yeah, that could be its own episode, like for sure. Did we get to 3? I'm losing count. I don't know.
I don't think so. Do you have another one for yourself?
Yeah, another one. You had ambition, sense of humor.
I think like I don't want to put it as balance like Michelle did and copy her for 2, but like for me having different interests is important. Like I'm like you. I will like sit outside, like go out or paint or sit at home and watch Netflix for 16 hours. Like I do a lot of different things to like relax and unwind, and like I have a lot of hobbies. It's kind of weird. I feel like I'm a jack of all trades, master of none sometimes, but like for somebody, like somebody has to kind of, if they don't enjoy all the same things that I do, like I kind of want at least a little bit of support in like, letting me still do some of these things and knowing that they don't necessarily need to do them with me. Like my boyfriend watches The Bachelor with me, but I would still watch The Bachelor even if he didn't like want to watch it with me. You know what I mean?
That's such a good point. It's knowing like who you are on your own, right? Like
exactly.
You know what you enjoy. And I think we all probably have been in relationships where you lose yourself a little bit, right? Like and you don't even sometimes realize it's happening. And so I think you really, like you said, you have a lot of hobbies, those, you're solid in those. And so it's just like staying consistent to yourself. So that's a good one. I like that one. Michelle, what's your third one?
I don't know. I'll think about it.
Can I point something out?
Yeah.
That kind of, I want you guys to dissect. Why was none of our three sexual expectations? Because should that not, I feel like for men, that's a really important aspect, but none of us said it. So not that, and that's fine. I was wondering if Michelle at the very end was going to be like, look, I need that in my life.
I was definitely thinking that. Is that a standard though?
I don't know.
I feel like that's just baseline.
Physical attraction for the longevity of a relationship, shouldn't it be? I don't know. That's what I wanted to see what y'all had to say about it.
That's a good point for sure. I'm actually surprised that Michelle's didn't have something to do with dogs.
Oh,
I feel like Michelle's third would be like must love dogs.
Must love dogs. No, I would say chemistry and physical attraction would probably be my third. Because that is that's super important. And I'm not saying like, oh, I have to date a guy that fits this like very specific physical type, but I do have to feel that like strong physical connection or physical attraction with someone. And I have some like awesome guy friends who I've had to friend zone because I'm like, you're great on paper. I'm sure it would be a great match, but it's just not there. Like I just don't have. I feel like chemistry is kind of like a diluted term these days, but like it's important and it does matter.
And sexual chemistry is very different than like mental. Like to your point, like I'll usually friend zone someone if I connect with you on a mental level and maybe an emotional level. But if that physical piece isn't there, you're not going to get out of it what you need. And I'm not going to get out
of it. Right. Yeah.
And
I think, sorry, go ahead. I lost my train of thought.
I didn't have anything else. We could dive heavily into this physical thing though.
Yeah. Oh, what I was going to say. So like chemistry can evolve over time too, though. Right. So I think that's part of the reason why it didn't immediately come to mind for me is just like, because it can evolve and it can devolve. Somebody that you are so physically attracted to in the beginning of the relationship, you might not be attracted or as attracted to 6, 12, 14 months down the line.
Right.
A life event could happen and maybe you're less attracted to them. So I think chemistry to me isn't just something that happens and exists. It definitely is that. But I feel like it's also something you really need to focus and work on within the relationship because these things do happen.
So you're saying you build it.
I'm saying you can. And I think, and if you have that immediate, like, God forbid I call it a spark, like vom, but like if you have that initial spark with somebody, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be there. So I think like, to me, that's also just kind of something to keep in mind with chemistry too. That I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, because I think you're right. I think the physical mental and emotional part, if we're talking about like long-term, like decades of marriage, there's always going to be chapters where one of them fades and someone else's hasn't, and like you're never going to be on the same page. And so I think again, knowing in the beginning that you have someone who communicates and is honest with you, like I don't know, like I'm one of those weird women that I would much rather my husband come to me and tell me he's thinking about cheating, or asks if he can bring someone else in versus him doing it. Mm-hmm. Like I would much rather him just come to me and have the conversation, because most likely if you're logical and rational and you explain where you're at with me, I can wrap my head around it. And maybe get on board, or at least communicate with you why I can't. But I think when not just men, women too, like when you just go out and do something, you're taking away that person's say and what potentially didn't have to be a horrible thing. Like, I don't know, like maybe I'm weird when I say that, but I could I would have a lasting relationship with someone who came to me and talked these things out versus just doing them to me without giving me a say.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I feel like the other thing too is when you have that conversation, like I feel like when it comes to conversations about chemistry and about sex, even within a couple where you might be really strong and talking about a lot of things, for some reason, talking about sex is still so hard.
It is.
And it's so important because of, I mean, literally everything that's tied to that, like emotional health of the relationship, physical health, if, somebody's going to cheat. So I don't think you're crazy. I think that's a great point. And I think that's something a lot of people have trouble doing, even if they do consider it, but most just don't consider it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have a hard time with it. I mean, I think as humans, we all do, because we think we're protecting ourselves or the other person. And in reality, you're just not giving them a say. Like and that's where I think when people get cheated on, it's more about the disrespect, right? Like of not being
dishonesty.
Of not being part of this secret. And it's like, well, maybe it didn't have to be a secret. If you had a conversation with your wife, she might be like, well, I'm sick of your ass too. I need to go on a date with someone. Like you don't know.
Oh no, you froze.
Oh no.
She was like, and mic drop.
There we go.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
My internet was like, you're getting too deep. We're going to cut you off.
See, the internet doesn't want to talk about chemistry and sex either.
I do think that's like it's a good time to transition to something that I did want to make sure we covered. The standards or preferences that your family or friends have for you versus what's actually important to you. Can't go an episode without mentioning Daniela Hannah, 68. Love her, adore her. My mom is a queen. And she has a very interesting set of standards for me. And there are some that overlap with mine. But she's religious and I am not. And that's something that is on her list and always will be. And I think she's probably hoping that I stumble into a man who's like, want to go to church with me? And I'm like, sure. But so that's something that I'm praying
for that
I think about as well. And I'm very close. Like I'm very close to both sides of my family, like my parents and my brothers. And my step parents as well. And so their expectations and standards are important to me, but I'm very aware of it's like a consideration, but I am very I need to do what's going to be best for me and like how I want to live my life and whatever that may look like. So I'm kind of curious what y'all's thoughts are on this.
I'll let Marie go.
I was going to let you go.
No, I already, oh Lord. Yeah, you go. My parents have very high expectations. So you go, and then I'll explain.
Well, then I'll be the opposite because I feel like my mother has given up a lot of, and maybe she just doesn't communicate her standards to me, but I feel like she's given up a lot of her standards. Like I would say, if she had her perfect match for me, he definitely would be religious, to Michelle's point. Like I think our moms are very aligned with that. For me, that's not a deal breaker. I mean, I would say that I'm spiritual, but I don't need my partner to be too. I do need my partner to be respectful of what how I choose to practice, and not be like a dick about it. But, and to just have open discussion. Like, I think everything is just coming back to this communication, but I don't really know that my family has any other real standards for me other than he's got to make me happy, or at least, I need to be happy while I'm with him. I think that's kind of the be all end all for Miriam.
What about, so outside of your family, what about how your friends, your friends' standards for you, or how your friends' kind of preferences affect
You want to answer that for me, Michelle?
No, I mean, I think
that's a harder one.
You and I had a really interesting conversation a few months ago, and it was around, it was just as a friend, you can't evaluate your friend's partner based off of your standards and what you would want to date. You have to evaluate based off of their needs. So for example, I for sure need to date someone who's at least a mild extrovert and can hang in any situation, because whoever my future boyfriend is, watch out. You're going to be dragged around from the fucking pool party to the...
You got to adapt. You got to be easy, willing to adapt.
You don't know where you will be with me on a Saturday afternoon or evening. And you got to be it's fine. We're going.
I don't think that means they need to be an extrovert. I think that just means they need to roll with your punches.
I guess I think it's the opposite of an extrovert. I think you need someone who's just cool. Okay. Just super chill.
We'll find out someday. But someone, going into every social situation or something that's not something that I feel is a key factor for you. So I think it's important when you are talking to your friends, or meeting their partners, or a guy they're interested in, or a girl they're interested in, keeping in mind that you're not evaluating them based off of what you're looking for or what you need, but based off of what your friend needs. Obviously, assuming there's respect and honesty, and they're not treating your friend like shit.
Yeah. I think friends
bare minimum
than family, because you're around your friends more, right? At this stage in our life, we see our friends a lot more. Maybe not all of us, but me not being near them. I see friends a lot more. I think the friend thing is also tricky because it's our jobs to be protective, right? Isn't that part of friendship?
Yeah.
At least for me, I want to know you're going to look out for me and tell me the truth if I'm in an unhealthy situation. But I think on the other side of that, we have to keep in mind, we only really tell our friends the bad things, right? We only call our friends when we're oh my God, he's driving me crazy. So
when we're upset. Yeah.
When we're upset, right? Because we need someone to talk to and feel that support us.
Yeah.
And so I found that sometimes with friends, they don't like my boyfriends at the time. And I blamed them. And I'm well, no, in all reality, they're responding based on what I've made our relationship look like. I have made our relationship look like a hot mess because I don't tell them the good things. I don't tell them whatever on the positive side. So I think we have to be aware of that. If we're going to bring someone around our friends, we need to properly communicate with our friends how our partners make us happy, along with the bad.
That's such a good point.
My best friend, she's a Scorpio. She will never like some of my exes. And it does not matter if they come back as a new and improved man. They're dead to her. It's just that it's never gonna happen.
No, my cousin said that she's trying to not necessarily date her ex again, but she was she's like, hey, like, I'm going to get lunch with him or something. And, we've reconnected and I'm just trying to, smooth things over, no bad blood or whatever. They, have a lot of similar friends and stuff like that. And I was like, you better not fucking go back to him. Like, I'm the same way. I am so protective. And I was like, no. And she was like, Marie, I'm like, I'm not supporting you. Do what you need to do. But I swear to God, if he fucking hurts you,
dead.
I'm going to, yeah, DEAD, not DED.
What are y'all's thoughts or like recommendations for maybe for someone who doesn't know what their standards are, or their standards are evolving and maybe they're, it used to be about like looks and income and this and that, and now they're trying to like really identify what matters. Do you guys have any recommendations for like Emily, you came prepared. You had you've got your 3. You've obviously done some work on this. So any recommendations or just advice for people who are trying to figure that out?
Go to therapy.
This is going to sound not at all helpful, but I think you just have to embrace where you're at. So 2 years ago, I had no standard. I mean, I had they had to be a decent, sane, attractive human being. But I knew that I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was just looking to hook. I was at that stage. And so I think it's a matter of just being where you're at. Like me trying to force myself to fight that forced me into relationships I didn't even want to be in. And I broke up with them after a couple of months. You hurt a lot of people because you're trying to be something that you're just not ready for. So for me, when I finally sat in that space of I'm going to take and give yourself a goal, a deadline, this isn't who I want to be forever, but I'm going to take a year and really hoe around. I haven't done that before and I need to do that for myself. So I think it's acknowledging where you're at and being okay with that. Cause I fought it for years and I didn't get anywhere. And then when I owned it, what happens is you naturally, I think it's just part of being human, you naturally will phase into the next set of standards. Cause if I sat down and wrote my standards of what I wanted versus where I was, it's impossible. It just can't happen. But I think it's okay to write it down to say I need to go through these standards I'm on now, which at the time was very low, to get here. And I hope that makes sense, but I think it's okay to just embrace your standards where they are. You don't have to be pursuing marriage or maybe you do, maybe those are your standards and you're ready for that. But for me, once I just let myself go through the process without forcing it, just kind of came together. And I know that's a really frustrating answer, but it just does.
I think that's such a good point. You also mentioned writing it down, which, I mean, obviously my gut is go to therapy, but also I think there's, but I think, so the thing for therapy too is then you've got a sounding board. You have somebody who's unbiased. If you're sitting here, say your standards are, I want a guy that looks a certain way and makes a certain income, and these are my standards, and this is what I want. You have somebody to sit there, and maybe it doesn't have to be a therapist. Maybe it has to be a really good friend that you trust that's going to say, okay, well, why? Why do you want these things? Or even Michelle just now, and she's like, I want somebody extroverted. I'm like, I don't know if that means he needs to be extroverted, but it sounds like he needs this. So to bounce ideas off of, and then to thoroughly journal, what do I want and why do I want it? I think would be my biggest advice.
And what am I offering? If my standards are a husband, house, kids, or whatever, or just a committed relationship, am I even solid enough in myself to not cheat on you? And so you have to be in a certain mindset. And if you're not in that mindset, don't force it because it is not going to work and you're going to hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, that's so true. Michelle, what advice would you give?
I don't know. That was pretty fucking good. I'm
I
like,
love when
"That's pretty
Michelle
good."
asks questions she doesn't want to answer herself.
Um,
Happening here? Okay, got it.
no, I mean, I just kind of along the same lines. It takes a level of honest self-awareness because sometimes I think what we do is we project the standards that we think we care about to, appease society or friends or family, and it's like kind of like calling bullshit on yourself and figuring out, like Emily said, like what are you bringing to the table? Are you holding yourself to those standards? And really like, why do I want this? Is it actually that I want this? And really kind of like doing that work. And if you're not in a place to do that work, then like
No.
enjoy the space. Like
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
and take that pressure off of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you take that pressure and that guilt off of yourself, that's like a totally different frame of mind. And then, over time, or maybe one day you wake up and you're like, meh, okay, like this is what I want now, or I'm finding myself more attracted to this now. I do think there is a huge component of it that's just like natural evolution with self-awareness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, to your point, Michelle, just removing those expectations. I did that for a year. I had the best time. like I had
Get it.
the craziest things that I never thought I would experience happen, but like all in good fun, like the best time. And it was like, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. But I do not want to be with someone like that down the line. Like you just kind of, and you laugh at it a little more because you're enjoying it. But along the way, to your point, Michelle, you're kind of like picking up cues, like you're picking up the natural process that your brain needs to go through to elevate to the next level, whatever that is, whether you want to be single or not.
And I mean, that's a big part of the reason why I even started Swipe in the City as the blog. Like it was part like self-reflection. I do that by writing. And it was also in part because it was like I was dating, I wasn't taking it too seriously. And I just kind of like wanted to have fun and realized like the more fun you have, the more stories you have too. So now here we are.
And maybe you'll meet someone on the way. Like you just don't know. But no,
I
think that you all started this. I mean, I remember when Michelle first, I think I was by the pool even when she told me about it. And I was like, this is the best idea because I think anytime like people can get on and you all make it so welcoming and comfortable, I think like anytime people can get on and not only hopefully help other people, but reflect on themselves. Like that's an amazing thing. Cause we all, none of us know what we're doing in all honesty. So I think for people to be able to have a platform to feel like they're not alone in that is great. Like this, I love that y'all do this. This is incredible. So thank you for letting me join.
We can end it there. Thank you.
I mean,
that was the best plug ever.
I was actually going to say, like, I feel that's a good time to wrap up. I don't know, unless anyone has anything else. Like, I feel like we really covered where my thoughts were and what I wanted to talk through. So yeah, I think maybe we wrap.
Yeah, I'm definitely good with wrapping. I'm trying to think if there's one more final. We can say this. All right. So the final standard minimum dating requirement here: date somebody who bumps Missy Elliott.
Absolutely.
We'll leave everybody with that and make sure that it's added to your list of standards.
On that note, Emily, if people think you're super awesome, which you are, where can they find you on not like where you live?
My shit is private, y'all. Don't ask me.
Okay. All right. Stay out of those DMs.
No, at I don't even know my handle. I think it's at EFAAR. I don't know.
Just DM Swipe in the City and
this is so sad. No, this shows
send it to you.
This shows how little I know about social media. But yeah, DM me if you. What were my expectations?
Consistency.
DM me if you're consistent, care about your family and friends, and what was my last? See, now I've already forgot.
Honest communication.
Thank you.
Yes. If you are those three things, then, well, you won't be able to find Emily, but slide into Swipe in the City and we will connect you. We will be matchmakers.
If you guys post this, just tag me.
Yeah, and then y'all know where to find us. Swipe N the City across platforms. Please like, comment, share our shit so that more people can see it and hear it and love it.
Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, please.
Yeah, don't forget about Apple Podcasts. We're there. I mean,
I love reading those reviews.
I'm personally not there, but other people can be. But yeah, I think that's it.
That's it.
Cheers.
Cheers. Feels weird saying that when we don't have alcohol.
I know, it's confusing.